Welcome, everyone. This show, we're talking about presenting your photography for sale. So that's the topic of today's show. And I have some good questions to go along with this from you guys. And some of the questions I'm going to actually share with you ahead of time, such as should I line item my license fees? How many images should I present to the client? Should I have a deadline for previews? Those are some of the questions I'm going to answer today, but I'm going to start off with a question from Alex. And it's actually, there are two questions to get us moving in this live conversation. So those of you who come in during the live show, welcome. If you have not checked out the live show, make sure you hit the bell icon after you subscribe to this channel, and you'll be notified when I go live. And when the desktop version allows us to give notifications ahead of time, I will most certainly do that. But currently, that is not an option. Right now, I've been going live a couple times a week, so just keep an eye out. And if you can catch me, I'm trying to establish a system that'll make it easier for you to kind of keep an eye out. But right now, the only time that I have firmly established, of course, is noon Eastern Standard Time for the marketing show, which you can catch at Rosh.video. Okay, so Alex's question. I'm assuming that when you first show images to the client that you're choosing from, that they choose from your watermarking photographs. Correct? Is that correct? And yes, I do watermark them. And I think it's really important, even in situations, for example, I use PhotoShelter quite often, or I will use Lightroom to create a website that I upload to my host, and then I send them that link. And they can review the photographs that way. It's like a customized website that you can create through Lightroom. And if you've not done that, that's a pretty cool way to go about it, especially when you have a lot of images to review, for the client to review. And this way, they can do so, but you keep a watermark on there. And more than anything, even with the PhotoShelter, I make sure there's a watermark on there, even if it's a client I trust, because down the line, somebody's going to drag and drop that photo onto their desktop or something like that, or even screen capture it. And it's going to be low res. It's not going to be right. And it's going to represent you. So as much as anybody's stealing, even if they're low res photographs, especially actually if they're low resolution photographs, make sure you still put a watermark on them, because you don't want somebody to take that and then blow it up in some way and say, hey, look at this photographer took this photograph. And again, it looks all grainy and it's not anything that you would be proud of. So it's as much protecting the quality of your work, as well as making sure someone doesn't use an image. Let's say somebody switches jobs and finds a folder full of images. Quite often they assume, right or wrong, and mostly wrong, that they have access to those images, that they can use those images for marketing. And that's, I think, quite often what happens when companies get in trouble. They think because it was in their system, the photo was in their system, they automatically had right to use the photo for whatever they needed for future marketing, especially if the people were not around during the original assignment or whatever it may be. Okay, the second part of that question, he's asking, with the per image pricing specifically, do you have an issue taking a longer period of time to get paid? Because, say, in corporate circles, decisions take a while to come through bureaucracy, basically. It takes longer for people to make decisions when you do the per image thing versus giving them all the images, I guess, is the other option. But there are a lot of ways to go about it. Even if you photograph hourly or charge hourly, and people still have to select specific images for you to do your post-production. Honestly, it's still going to take time, especially if there's a bureaucracy. So per image pricing per se doesn't slow the process down. It's a bureaucracy is a bureaucracy. And if there's a lot of levels within a company, a boss of a boss of a boss, they all have to see the images and approve everything. Yeah, that can just slow everything down. It really has very little to do with the pricing system. And we'll talk more about that in a few moments, of course. Okay, so then we're talking about presenting photography for sale. And there are a few ways you can do that. And we just mentioned one. You can present your work as a website, and there are a number of different tools out there. You have SmugMug, you have Photo Shelter, and as I mentioned before, you can use Lightroom to create a gallery for people to review. And the questions often come in, and I think I'm going to mix some of these up. Well, how many images do you show? All I can do is share with you how I go about it. I do a first edit. I edit out the bad stuff, but it still could be 300, 400, 500 images that the client has to look at, but it depends. If I can get away with lowering the number of images that the client can look at or has to look at, that is better, because clients certainly can get overwhelmed. Even family clients, as well as corporate clients, can get overwhelmed really quickly. And sometimes it is better for you to select, okay, here are the 2 or 3 best options. And as photographers, a lot of times we take a lot of images, and maybe there's 20 great options. If you can narrow it down to the 2 or 3, let them know, hey, if you would like more options, there are more, but these are my recommendations. Some people want those additional images, but not always. Even if you narrow it down to 2 or 3 of the best of this session and that section and this section and that moment, whatever it may be, you still have a lot of images. So you have an opportunity. So it's a combination of making it easy for the client to make decisions, as well as making sure that you have enough opportunity to sell more images too. So it's a fine line. It depends on the topic. And it most certainly depends on the type of photography that you're doing. Some of my commercial stuff, I show them 1 or 2 versions and that's it. And then move on, where there are other situations, for example, events. If it's an event and maybe it's for a public relations firm, I'm going to show them as much as possible, because yes, there's some key moments, but they need specific images. Now, often in public relations, I photograph hourly, and because it's usually an event situation, but they still want to see, they're the highlights that they want, and they told me they want, but they still probably want to see additional images. And so I will show them those images and then make additional adjustments, especially if they're going to press or something like that. So there are a lot of ways to go about this. When it comes to family photography, really, the best way is in person. And you can present with a book. You can have a book, a little old school, or you can present on screen and show through some sort of a system, whether it's Lightroom. And I know there are some systems out there that you can use, either whether it's Photo Mechanic or any type of a system like that, that'll give you an opportunity to show all the images that you've edited down, or if it's a session immediately right after the session, maybe you take photographs and you show them the images immediately, make it really easy for them to view the images and select those images. But that's usually the best, because the connection with the people, immediacy is always good. If you can photograph and edit down in a few minutes some of the best images and try to do some sales immediately while you're on location, that can often be a better scenario than not. But once again, everybody has a different workflow, and sometimes, as we know, a lot of photographers do a lot of post-production today. So there are some there's some situations there that we need to consider. There are many different ways to go about it. There is no one best solution, but just from a sales point of view, sooner you get to them, the better. And in person is better than not in person. That is for family and retail photography. When it comes to commercial photography, I have found sending a nice presentation website for people to share with their partners and their bosses works the best, and we go from there. All right, I'm going to switch some of these questions around. Should you give a timeline? Because this kind of fits into what we were just talking about. Should you give a timeline for the image previews? And ultimately, the goal here is to stay in control of the sale. And so I often recommend, yes, give a timeline. Say, look, I will follow up with you on this day. Hopefully, we can have some of your own your photos, selections at that time, and that's what I would highly recommend. So consider giving a timeline. If they need an extension, hey, fine, go with that extension, but give people a timeline. Don't leave it open-ended and assume they're going to get back to you. They're going to look at things immediately and say, oh, we're going to look at it again, and never look at it again. I mean, in the corporate world, they have deadlines, they have people around them. But when it comes to, especially to family work, I always say definitely have a deadline to follow up and so forth. And if it's corporate, there's nothing wrong putting a deadline in place, but asking them when their deadline is and when a good time to follow up is, that's also something to consider. Okay, the last question that I have, and if you have questions, make sure to connect with me at Rosh Sillars on Twitter, or put them in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, of course, and the bell icon, as I mentioned before, so you're notified when I go live. And usually I've been going live on Mondays only, but now this is a live-only channel. So I'll go live 2 or 3 times a week to answer your questions. As I gather questions, you can ask questions on roshsillars.com. Also, I have a pricing article where a lot of people ask questions there in the pricing articles, and I'll bring some of those over here. I think Alex's question was from over there. Okay, the last question was, should I line item my licensing fees? Now, as you know, I'm a big per image pricing fan, and a lot of times I include my licensing fees in that price. But I think there's nothing wrong with putting a fee for the licensing to let people know. This is especially true in commercial, but it also can be true with family photography, because you can say, look, this is for personal use. This is the usage. Not a bad thing to do, especially in your contracts, but even in your proposals, whatever it may be, for personal use. That way it's, and even define what personal use is. So in case someone decides to run for Congress, they don't use that photo without paying for it. That would be a more commercial usage. But if you, on the commercial side, yeah, definitely put a line item of what the usage is, especially if it's a new client, or if you're unsure. It seems like they're unsure how they're going to use it, and you've come to a conclusion, or you feel like, you know what, this person's never used a photographer before and they don't understand it. So maybe that line item is out there, or not. You can say included in this per image price is a license fee for this. So you can line item out. You don't have to put the cost per se, but you can certainly put in what is in that usage fee. I guess that's another good way to go. Okay, there we go. That's today's show. And of course, when people come in too, sometimes we get some people, obviously, if right now when I'm going live random, a lot of people don't catch this until later. But those of you who catch it on the replay, of course, your questions are always encouraged here. It's what makes this community go. The idea behind this is most certainly the more information we all have, the more successful we'll be, the healthier of a community, even if it's just your local community. If we get people in, refer this show to people, let people know about this channel, other photographers, to help them become a better business person, understand the industry a little bit better. And if more people in your sphere are actually abiding by best practices, the healthier your community is as a whole. So let's not think about internationally changing the world of photography. Just think about your local area and how you can support your local photographers. And one of the ways you can business and continue to do what we love to do, and that is to photograph. You have a great day.